Forest Power Plant Network. What is up? It is Wednesday night. We are here together for our weekly conversation. I couldn't be more grateful to be with you tonight. We've got Adam Danforth joining us, who just has a wealth of culinary knowledge and history and stories, and so much he's going through right now in life and the ways he's contributing that I think you're going to be blown away and fascinated. And, you know, what's true in my life is oftentimes I'm most moved by and encouraged to push the boundaries of what I think is possible by watching other people do it. And seeing Adam's story and getting to know him a little bit, I think will have the same effect on you. So let me get him and bring him on. Remember, you're welcome to ask me or Adam comments throughout the night. Type them into the group. I'm going to go in the group right now and just make sure that, fingers crossed, I can find us so I can see who's asking questions. Let me bring on Adam. Yes. What is up, my friend? Arms raised. We did it. You know what? Like technology, we've had these, Adam, where it's happened where like it just didn't go live. It simply didn't work. So now everyone in my house knows everyone is off Wi-Fi for the next hour. No one's on, and here we are. Hey, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. There are so many people in our group excited to connect with you tonight, seeing part of your story. You're without knowing you well personally. We just connected, 3 minutes ago. But reading some of your story, and well, I guess we connected a month ago as we were working on some stuff. You've got a really neat background in that you're an expert in a field. You've pursued something with a ton of dedication, and now you get to work with people all over the country and the world. And now you're taking some of those gifts in your heart and you're serving in a new way. So let me start by saying I'm super excited to connect with you, and can't wait to hear a bit more about your story.
Thanks. I appreciate that. It's a really kind invitation into the space.
Yeah, tell me. So, can you just give our community a bit of your background? How did you get into culinary and end up being the person that teaches the world butchering correctly?
It was a little bit by happenstance, honestly. I didn't have a professional culinary background. Really, I worked in marketing and advertising through my 20s, and similarly to culinary, I was overworked during the time where you were sort of pushing yourself and proving yourself in ways that often were self-sacrificing. But eventually it wasn't rewarding. It wasn't providing me with the value that I saw in being able to contribute so much of my life into something that was creating the change I wanted to see in the world. And I'd always romanticized this idea about being a professional chef when I was not in culinary. And to be clear, I'm not a chef, so I don't have a professional training in that way. And at the time when I was 30, and I realized that I wanted to switch careers. I wanted to focus on food, but I also wanted there to be more balance in my life. And the pursuit of a professional chef career felt like it was not going to provide me with sort of the trifecta of what I was yearning for, which later on I also really admired. Of course, put on the spot, I'm going to forget his name, the chef of Le Bernardin, and his balance in life is really what I was aspiring to at the time, which was really a balance of work, of your relationship time and your personal time as these three components of your life. And how do you succeed in each area? Because full success really requires that blend of those things. And so I pursued butchery because it was a niche of food. It was an area of food that allowed me to go deep. And I also felt it was the most complicated area of food. And I continue to feel like it is the most complicated conversation in food is the one around meat. And so it offered me it would offer me at the time an endless opportunity to learn and grow in a space like that.
Wow. So from marketing and advertising to meat, um, did you know someone in this world? Did you in culinary that?
No, no.
So
I literally like I was running an agency in New York, and I
okay.
closed that agency in 2008 amidst the like collapse of the real estate and the financial system. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I left, I and I thought, I wanted to pursue butchery. This was like a thing. And then I realized that there was like no way to do that. There was like, there were like no resources. I was trying to figure out how to learn. I like in my naive mind, I was like, part of it was like I wanted a mentor, which is I've never had one. And it's like a sad thing that has been like a storyline in my life is like never having actually had a mentor in any sort of like professional, really also like in a personal realm. And so I felt like butchery offered this classic mentor apprenticeship role. And I quickly realized that like that's not the industry anymore of butchery. And those old mentors who are masters are a literally dying breed. And so I was really fortunate the timing to be able to enter into a course in upstate New York that was also combined slaughter and butchery at the same time. And it was a crash course that was meant to address a growing issue, which is the dearth of talent and slaughterhouses and things like that. Um, and it was a pilot program. It was just like I was lucky. They didn't normally offer anything like that. But I moved to upstate New York, and then like suddenly was like in a slaughterhouse in like Nike Dunks and like a sweatshirt, like thinking like I was like ready to learn, And it was like, I mean, and I was, but it was, I was thrown right into the middle of it. There was no like onboarding.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So first of all, I'm fascinated. Mentorship in my life has been key, finding people along the way, and it can change at different points in life. But I love that that's a part of your story of why you went to a specific niche was this opportunity for mentorship and to have someone to learn from and grow under and be around. They say you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So you might as well spend time with some pretty damn great people.
That's an interesting idea. I've never thought about that. And who would those 5? I don't even have 5 people don't even come to mind. Like amazingly enough, or sad enough, I guess maybe. And that was like my the saddest part of. If I can be honest about the downsides of winning a Beard Award, that like the downside of that was that it sort of it ascended me into that career quicker than I wanted to. And then I ended up losing opportunities of mentorship because people look to me as a mentor. And so I've had to then find other mentors really in butchery that was rare to come by because of the position that I was suddenly in. And that's how, and the same thing happened in marketing. And now the same thing's happening in running this disaster relief organization, of which I also didn't have experience in. And now I'm running this different organization. So it's like, the like growth into a position is, I don't intend to skip that part of my education. That's not like I spend time with things and I learn them. But there have been these like moments in time where things changed incredibly dramatically because of just like not even opportunities, just like events that occurred that ended up transforming the trajectory of some aspect.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. First, hi. Jennifer's on. Chris is on. Deborah's on. Shannon's on. Hi, friends. Adam and I are glad you can join us. This was Deborah's comment saying balance is key. Deborah, I think we would agree, and I like Adam's kind of definition of success, that 3-pillared approach. Would you say career, relationships, and personal?
Yeah.
I just left a partnership in a firm right when COVID started for that very reason, was to get some more of that. Otto is on. What is on, Otto? So a question for you. So the James Beard Award, it's something that everyone in food service and culinary knows about, the James Beard Association. Was that something you won 2 of those awards by writing books, correct?
I won 1 award, and it was for writing a book, my first book about butchering. I released 2 books at the same time. Originally, it was actually supposed to be 1 book, but then I didn't know shit about writing a book. So when the publisher gave me, this wasn't my idea to write a book either. It was like I rejected the offer. I didn't feel like I was well equipped. I had only been butchering at that point for like 7 months. Like
what?
And it was a situation where I was referred to somebody because I had done a sheep butchering demo at a farm in upstate New York. Okay. And the publisher had contacted me on Facebook of all places. And I told them straight up, I was like, that's the only demo I've ever done. Like, and they wanted an outline from me. I was just like, I know other people who are butchers who are more qualified, who are published writers. Like, I write well, like I know that, but I just don't feel like I'm the right person. And they still asked me for like a sample outline, and I submitted one, and I was like, who else am I competing with? And they were like, no one. And I was just like, this seems like an irresponsible way to vet your author. Like, and then they approved it, and I was just like, I don't understand you guys, like, and but it ended up being that, writing that book, really what it is it's almost like a journalistic dive into my own educational process, because I knew a lot of that information because I'm just like an obsessive researcher in a way for anything that I'm involved in. But there was, so a lot of, I think, how that book has appealed to people who are learning is because it wasn't written by somebody who was so entrenched in the material for so long that they forgot what it was like to actually learn that material.
Yep.
And also because I came from outside the paradigm, I just asked very different questions about meat from the onset, which is also how I teach at this point. I mean, my viewpoint and my education and my workshops are very different than most other butchery workshops that people do for that same reason. And so, I mean, winning the Beard Award was just like, I mean, like an absolute, like total shock. I mean, it was, so yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It was also like 2015, and I welcomed it because 2014 was like the worst year of my life. So 2015 was a much better year. I won an ICP award. I ended up winning a Beard Award, and then I went to Iceland and did this like 6-day ultra marathon, and I ended up winning that, which was like super weird. And I was like, 2015 is a good year. And then after that, it was like, back to normal, but.
That is a fascinating journey. Who is this? Chef John Little. How did you have the balls to jump into a book with such little experience?
That's a good question. And I mean, honestly, it was a bit of a miserable experience because also I struggle with a lot of self-deprecation. And the imposter complex was basically has undermined a lot of my confidence in my career because of this not having this traditional background that like I didn't come from the apprenticeship I wanted. I was offered a book deal far too early in a normal career. I ended up winning a Beard Award from it. Like there were many things that I feel like this is not significant. This is not a signifier of what I feel like the traditional trajectory is for people. And at the same time, while writing that book, it was like, I mean, the negative thoughts of just like, who the fuck are you to be writing this book? Basically made my life miserable, made my marriage miserable. It was like, it was terrible. And actually the race in Iceland and the training for that was actually part of a series of races I planned to do that were meant to combat that same thing, because I felt like there was only a way that I could pursue such like physical goals if I could transition my mind from negative motivation, like you should be doing better, who the fuck are you should be running faster, to something that was positively supportive of myself. Yep. And that like in those dark moments that you're just like not shitting on yourself more, and that you're looking at the struggle for what it is, and then you're pursuing that still past your boundaries of mentally in a way that can only be achieved like through positive mentality. So it wasn't like I confidently was like jumped into that book project. I mean, it was a burden at the time. I mean, and I did it in secrecy because I was embarrassed to tell anybody. No one knew I was writing a book. None of my friends knew I was writing a book. Anybody who knew me that was like, had been in the butchery world in New York where I was living at the time, they were like, what are you doing these days? And I was like, I'm raising a daughter, and I mean, I'm just like trying to figure things out. Like I was too embarrassed to tell people because I didn't feel like I was worthy of it.
Wow. John saying awesome stuff, man. I love it. Have you did an ultra marathon. Have you ever heard of the name, this is random, Cliff Young?
No.
You ever heard of the Cliff Young Shuffle?
No.
He was this guy that, I don't know, I digress, but your story sounds so familiar to this. Sometimes you end up thriving and winning and finding success when you don't know things that the world thinks you should. Right? Like you should, if you had been in butchering for 10 years, you probably wouldn't have been able to accomplish what you did because you didn't know all the things they had in their mind, the rules of the game. You didn't have those rules.
Right. Exactly.
He was this guy that he was Australian, showed up to an ultra marathon, and like everybody's got Nike and Adidas and everything. And he shows up he's a farmer in like the full overalls and like galoshes. And he didn't know that you sleep at night. So he just kept running because he grew up on a farm. They didn't have tractors. So he would be out running for 3 days straight, like herding sheep. He ends up winning the whole thing. This is in the 80s because he didn't know the rules of how it was supposed to be run. And he just kept going. So anyway, he reminds me of you.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Do you ever, by the way, too, when you were running, you talk about that self-deprecation and needing positive thought, positive talk. Are there things you say or you would say to yourself when you were running? Like for me, I am not inherently an athlete, and I'm not a runner. In COVID, I've become more of a runner. But like when I'm running, and it was so hard for me to get over the block, like literally I'm out there and I'm saying to myself, I am a beast, I am an animal, I am an athlete. And I just keep doing it over and over because I'm like huffing and puffing and I just want to stop right there. And I'm like, nope, I'm an athlete, I'm an animal, I'm a beast, keep going. Do you do that? Anything like that?
I similarly, I have my own mantras, my main one is, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. That's like,
yeah.
The main thing that I would push myself with, because I signed up for this, and that's sort of life in general. I mean, I think the more that my comfort zone is outside my comfort zone normally. Like if I'm like, I don't like settle into a comfort zone in a routine, and then I have to keep pushing my own boundaries, and you make mistakes in doing that, and you have to be okay. And that's also been incredibly difficult. It's sort of like, where's the, pushing yourself into areas where you're gonna step in your own shit, and feeling the backlash of it, not only just personally to your ego or to whatever, but also maybe like in your social constructs and relationships and all that stuff. So a lot of that growth, I feel like, is to me, that's like what I tell myself. It's also what's like inscribed. It was like what was inscribed on the back of my iPod that I took on that race, and and things like that. That was sort of like, you sign up for these things, then you can't shy away from them. It's a mentality of whether or not you're going to continue to grow past those boundaries.
Oh gosh, I love it. Yeah, it is hard. I think people who are afraid of failure or see setbacks as failures as opposed to just, this is just a part of the game, have a hard time. Or people who aren't comfortable being uncomfortable. You said you often live in that uncomfortable. have a hard time growing because growth only comes through those moments. Taz
I'm,
is on. Welcome, Taz. Good to see you, brother. Taz is our buddy who lives in Bentonville, Arkansas at Walmart. What is up, my man?
oh, Bentonville. That's
Yep,
an
yep.
interesting place.
I've never been.
Oh, I
Amazing.
was down
Go ahead.
there. I was down. I was in Bentonville a couple times because they were launching the culinary school that was there, Brightwater, and I was on the advisory council for that. And I mean, Bentonville's an interesting place. It's sort of like it's a very weird place because, of course, it's like, there's like lithium in the water or something, and everyone's like, it's like Pleasantville, sort of, like everyone's walking around, and it's like has this persona of Walmart. Of course, the Walton's just like all around it, but Brightwater, I was like so excited about potentially having this amazing culinary program that was going to have a really incredible butchery one around it. But then there was some fallout, and it didn't end up happening. But there's some great food there. The farmers market is really amazing there. So cool. It's an interesting place.
So cool. Taz, we are glad you're on. Rob Connolly says, amazing story, so impressive. He keeps thinking, run, Forrest, run. Rob, oh, great to see you, buddy. Yeah, no kidding. Cliff Young just keeps going. The Cliff Young shuffle, they called it, because he didn't actually run. He just sort of shuffled his feet. Pleasantville.
Well, you don't have to be fast if you just keep going.
Yeah,
like
right.
honestly, that's part of what the deal was with these sort of like stage races, is sort of like find your pace and just maintain it. I mean, if you and that's sort of like find your pace and just continue and continue and continue. You go out too fast, you like actually try to do these things really quickly, you burn out, But if you can find a pace that you can maintain forever, then everyone else ends up falling out.
It is fascinating how it works that way. What do they say? Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. And so people start sprinting and then they burn themselves out. Where if you do have that kind of slow and steady pace, in a decade, life can look incredibly different if you want it to.
Time is weird, It's like a year goes by quickly, but then when you look back, you're sort of like, holy shit, all this stuff happened in that year, So,
no kidding, this year's no different.
Totally.
I want to get to your this year in 1 second. Before we turn to the COVID times and what's going on in Oregon, in your hometown, and the ways you're contributing there. Give us a sense of what did your life look like pre this? What was your life? What does your life look like in 2019? Being the person who knows meat as well as anyone, and butchering and working, consulting for all these, restaurants and firms. What did a week or a month in the life of Adam look like?
I traveled really a lot for my work. And I worked with restaurants, nonprofits, other people who are interested in education and agriculture, and that could be anything from doing multi-day workshops that focused on on-farm slaughtering, whole animal butchery, meat and flavor science, and it could be training other butchers. It could also be taking like the staff of 11 Madison out to a farm and then going through a slaughter with them, and then breaking down a 7-year-old goat because no one thinks a 7-year-old goat is worth eating, and then profiling each individual muscle and giving them the sensory experience of like understanding the different value actually of what comes from age and growth and pasture and movement and all these things that actually that provide a far greater enjoyment when it comes to eating than the things that are prioritized in the modern meat movement. So much of what my education around meat is that there's an inverse relationship between flavor and tenderness, and we revere tenderness, but the reality is that flavor is the thing that actually fuels our like enjoyment, our emotional responses, and also chemically, flavor is the response like olfactory that actually creates strong memories. So systematically, the industrial meat movement has not only been creating younger and younger animals that are more and more tender, but less and less flavorful. And by doing that, not only do they just ruin the opportunity to create great food, but they're also slowly stealing like the actual potential of incredible food memories from us because the actual chemical components are no longer in the meat that can create those incredible memories. So that like spur them so that like later on when you have an olfactory reaction, you get these incredible reminders of deep, deep memory. They make up for that because they add really flavorful sauces and other things on top of it. But it doesn't make for the meat being any different. So a lot, like I would travel really a lot, and I would teach things like that, hands-on butchery. And then I'd also just launched a new project that I've been working on for a couple of years. It was also travel-based, which obviously isn't happening, called the Atlas of Butchery. And it basically aims to find, discover, and document like remaining meat masters from around the world, which could be an individual, a man or a woman, but it could also be a community. And so it was looking at all the different places where there are traditions around the language of meat, just like the lost languages of the world that are being lost, but like that there are traditions around meat that are also being lost because of just cultures dying out, industrialization, people like not wanting to take the time that it takes to do a lot of these things. So, you know, in January, right before when COVID started, when like the coronavirus started in the news, I was in Europe, in Spain and Portugal and Germany and England, delving into the beginning of a lot of these individual products or processes and traditions and butchery that are at risk of being lost, and beginning to do that. But then it all ended. So
wow. Deborah, our friend, is saying 7-year-old goat stew.
Yeah. So a lot of people think old animals are basically only meant for grinding, stewing, maybe. But the reality is that there's an the rest of the world in many ways understands the value of good meat more than America does, because the idea of cheap, younger, faster meat was born here. And so the 7-year-old goat, no, it wasn't stew. We individually cooked all those muscles. I do sensory workshops as well, where we do blind tastings of two muscles against each other, so that you get the sort of like different textures and different sensations of minerality or sweetness or brightness or whatever. And all of them are flash seared, really high sear, and that's it. So it's a quick cooking method pretty much on all of them, and I take stuff from all over the body. The primary thing that you need to do with any older animal is have it age long enough post-mortem. So by hanging the animal longer, you really allow the natural process that occurs after death to break down the muscle fibers enough to then make up for the increased sort of tensile strength, the lack of tenderness that does come from older age. But when that lack of tenderness does not mean inedible. It also, the increase in flavor far more makes up for it. So, I mean, for anybody who knows meat even a little bit, generally speaking, you know that the most flavorful parts of the animal are often like the neck, the shanks, the shoulder, the belly, like all those areas that work really a lot. And it's the working part that creates the flavor. And that stuff happens more over age. So the older an animal is, the more a muscle is worked, the larger the animal is, the more it has to support. And all those things end up creating a far better experience. So by and large, at any of my workshops, people are like, I've never thought about meat this way, you know? And that's working with chefs like, you know, Rick Bayless, who've been like cooking with meat for, you know, decades. And it's sort of like when you hear people like that who say things like, I've never thought about meat that way, you really realize that no one thinks about meat a lot of time that way. And that's where asking these questions outside the paradigm are important for advancing a movement, you know?
Yeah, I have never thought. Warren is on. What is up, Warren? Toby's on. I have never. John Jaquat is on. Paul Kazina. Hi, everybody. I've never thought about memory tied to flavor. I think often about emotion. Oftentimes, you know, intense emotions in our life get tied to a memory, and that's why we can hold on to things from when any age. If there's a really positive emotion tied to it, then it's easy to recall, or really negative, they come back easy. I've never thought about that with flavor. And so that's really incredible to think about.
Well, there's a big movement around neurogastronomy, which is really that the effect on brains that have to do with the elements within food. And when it comes to meat, I mean, that's one of the primary things, which is what are called pre-flavor compounds. These are things that are developed before the animal dies, while the animal is alive, that then transition into compounds that can combine and oxidize and be transformed with heat and other things to add more flavor when you eat it. I mean, that's why you can't make like a good long cured ham with like shitty meat from a young animal. The best ham, the jamón de Bellota Iberico in Spain, they understand that you have to raise an animal for a certain amount of time, and it also has to be raised in the conditions that allow for those things like movement. How much longer do you need to age older meat? Well, that has to do with the species mainly. And I mean, there's a general rule, which is that the darker the meat and the larger the animal, the longer you have to age it. So you could say, like, let's say if we start at the smallest, like a chicken, if you're doing a pastured chicken, which is not even a quick growth one, like a Cornish cross, I would still recommend aging it 24 to 48 hours. If you're talking about like rabbits or turkeys or things like that are still like raised in pasture, so these are all animals that get a lot of movement that are older, you're talking about like 2 to 3 days maybe. Once you start to talk about small ruminants like sheep, goats, also applied to venison, deer, if you're talking about an animal that's, let's say, over 2 to 3 years, you would probably be looking at anywhere from 7 to 10 to 14 days, ideally aging. And then pigs, I mean, people don't think you can age pigs. They are a lighter meat, but they are also not supposed to be as light as we often see them. If it's a skinned pig, which means that the fat can oxidize more quickly, you can't really age it on the rail as longer. You can only do like 3 or 4 days. But if you have it skin on, you can age it for much longer. And you can also take the loins of pork for, 8 to 10 weeks if you want to in the right conditions. People don't often think you can age pork, but it's actually really delicious. And then beef or bison or even like Tibetan yak, which is sort of like my favorite red meat actually. That stuff, I mean, it needs to be aged anywhere from 14 to anywhere up to like 36 days or more, depending on the age, the size, the sex. I mean, if you're talking about I butchered a 11-year-old an 11-year-old bull named Ferdinand at Jose Andres's house, and it was like had been aged for 35 days, and it could have gone a lot longer. It was like we all realized that it was like you needed to give it more time, and it's that patience that the meat industry doesn't want to have. So
Gosh,
hopefully
I love it. Fascinating. Yeah, I think you did great. Chef John is loving this. I love it. I love that you're on, Chef. Okay, so we're gonna not hard stop because anyone can keep asking questions, of course. But let's talk about now. There's a lot that's been going on in your community, and tell us about. There were fires this summer in your town, in Ashland, and I believe it was after that you started Rogue Food Unites. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell us what happened this summer and what's going on up there.
September 8th, fire started about a half mile from my house, and by luck, the winds blew north, and luck for me, not luck for anybody who was north, and ended up following basically a greenway because it was started by a greenway. So it wasn't like a wildland fire that was started in the woods. It was started in town, and we live in a very dry, arid area. It happened to be the worst conditions for something like this to happen because it was, at the end of the summer, everything's super dry. We had really weird, blustery winds, high winds. It started and the fire just tore north, and there is some really interesting videos that showcase what happened that are on our website, which is roguefoodunites.org, and you can see in the media section some that illustrate actually what happened. But essentially, I mean, within 24 hours, it burned let's say it burned over 2,500 structures, mostly homes, and then left 40 plus thousand people evacuated and 4 plus thousand people permanently homeless. Many of these were already affected communities from other issues that had to do with either poverty or food insecurity and health issues, and were low-income areas that were along this greenway that I wasn't honestly even aware that there was such a concentrated population, but they were this population of mobile homes and manufactured homes, and they were just like tinderboxes, and it just took off. And a lot of it is a Latinx population here, which also is obviously, for anybody who works in food, you understand that they are probably more the backbone of our food industry and hospitality industry than any other cultural sector. So, we have a large agricultural industry here between stone fruits and wine and other stuff that they all work in. Now, unfortunately, like cannabis is taking over, but also just like in the hospitality industry, in our restaurants as owners and employees. So, in the aftermath, immediately when it happened, my first thought was that the restaurants are already in a crisis. We're already, now we're just like doubled down in the gutting of our industry. But before, it was already like we feel like we've been gutted, and I was like, what often happens and what I see happening in other disasters is that you have large agencies come in and they get all the federal aid money and they help for a certain amount of time and they leave, and it deflates the community. And I didn't want that to happen. And I was like, how do we get federal aid money and direct it, or raise money and direct it towards restaurants to then make all the food for evacuees, because they're going to be homeless and they're going to need food for a long time. And looking at like, what are the stats around restaurants? Well, they recycle revenue at 65% into a local economy, which is pretty much the most efficient of any economy or any sector in economy. They make jobs at 3 times the rate at any other economy does. They're the largest employer in Oregon, the second largest employer in the country. Like, these are reasons why we not only need a bailout in general and like help financially from the government, but also like as an economic stimulus of how you don't let this event end up collapsing your entire economy. Like, investing into restaurants specifically is the most efficient way to create that. And then at the same time, you're feeding the people, and you're also, I just feel like food is the best way to show people that you are there for them and that you support them. You recognize their struggle, you make food that's part of their culture, and that you time and time again are showing up. And we make meals 3 times a day, and time again, without fail, we're showing up when people think that we're not going to show up anymore. So I had no background in disaster relief, but it's worked. And at this point, we're the state contracted agency for 4 counties in Oregon. So we do Deschutes, Douglas, Klamath, Jackson, and Josephine County, which is crazy to think about that's like what it's been. And we took over the Red Cross contract for all those counties. And early on, places like World Central Kitchen and Operation Barbecue Relief were helpful and provided us with some funding in the very beginning. But again, they're not like, they do great work, but they also like, they're everywhere and they're nowhere. And they're not going to stay in a place long enough in order to make sure that it actually recovers. That's where I feel like a model like ours should be duplicated everywhere, because it's like, it requires coordination and it requires an immense amount of work, but it's not like it's a new way that I think restaurants need to consider what their place is in a world that has such inevitability of disaster. And what role we can play in order to support our communities, because so often we're showing up and just donating, and we're showing up like food people. This is a great thing. They show up all the time, we're tireless workers, but they should get paid for it, especially now more than ever.
Well, it sounds beautiful because you're getting funding. You're able to keep restaurants, people working, and keep them open at a time when, in Oregon, I think you're not able to eat in a restaurant or even outside a restaurant right now, if I'm correct,
No,
right?
you can't. It's
So,
changing. It's changing this weekend. This weekend,
oh,
yeah, yeah, it's changing this weekend. But you're gonna have to like build a whole new structure outside.
right.
It's gonna have to be like very different. And but at the same time, like I mean, people are scared. The distance, the numbers. I mean, I don't have to explain it to you guys. You guys know, like that's not a solution for like the restaurants. I mean, we are literally the ones that we're working with time and time again are like we don't know what we would do, you know, because we serve over 2,000 meals a day and we pay for every meal. We pay fair. At this point, we pay $12 for dinner, $10 for lunch, and $8 for breakfast. If you're making 200 dinners for us 3 times a week, I mean, that's like almost $7,000 that you're making a week from feeding just evacuees. I mean, that's a lot of money, especially in a small town in Southern Oregon. And so far we've served over 120,000 meals in this county alone, and we've directed over $1.3 million just in the last 10 weeks to food businesses.
Oh my gosh. Um, Adam, it's beautiful. I don't know a better word than it just sounds beautiful. Tell me, you made a comment and I don't remember. Talk about Corey Sanders is on. Ben is on. What is up, guys? Talk about the power of food. You mentioned it to nourish not just the body, but on a bigger scale. You said it's the food workers that show up and what food does to just help support a person. Like how do you see food supporting people on a bigger level than just their physical body?
I mean, I think that food has the ability to heal almost more than anything. I feel like it's the thing that everybody does. It also crosses cultures in ways that I feel like nothing else can. I mean, it's not like the metaphor breaking bread is there for a reason, and it doesn't just mean. So for me, how I got into this and why I was motivated to do it was because I wanted to support restaurants and I wanted to support evacuees and I wanted to figure out how to make that work. But I've learned even since then by hearing the stories from evacuees on that for the last 10 weeks that we show up every day with meals when other things are so unstable, where they're staying, what hotel they're staying in, if they're getting moved from, when the Red Cross is going to come back. Now they're not coming back because of COVID. So it's like, who do they call? Mental health issues, all these other things. I mean, 90% of evacuees in all of Oregon were already on SNAP benefits. So these are food insecure populations already. And to have time and time again, familiar faces show up with restaurant quality food that is made with like a heartfelt intention to show support, and also means that you are seeing somebody's struggle and that you are recognizing that like, we're here for you. This is as much as we can do around food, but like we're going to be here each and every day. You can rely on us more than many other things right now for them. And for me, in the end, that's like the most rewarding part of it, is understanding that, as there's so much chaos going on, and there's so much chaos in our organization because of course we're like in a natural disaster, in an emergency, and then we're trying to pair the needs of that with an industry like restaurants that are crumbling right now. And also just like, I mean, restaurants are sort of chaotic, let's be real, even in a good time, like the environment of restaurants is pretty crazy. So like you're pairing these two things together, and we're trying to like create stability and reliability for these people because they need it. It's a human right to be eating. And so in the end, I mean, we really do focus on hearing what people need, cooking to what they want. But at the same time, a lot of the time, it's just like the showing up every single day, no matter what, is the message that people need.
Heck yeah, someone will be there for me. Even just a smile or maybe a hope you're doing okay and some sustenance. Uh, how do we help you with what you're doing? What's the biggest way that this community can support you and your community in what you're doing right now?
Um, I mean, right now, I think that we are. I would almost prefer to help other communities, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
we are in a position through our organization, through our contract with the state, in order to really like help as much as we can. Normally, I would be like, help me fundraise, get the word out, get the like, and getting that sort of word out is really helpful. I mean, we still fundraise. I still do grants. I'm still privately dealing with donors, like, and all that is really helpful. But I think what would be even better is that in general, to help me like understand how to empower other people to do this same thing in communities where they know that they're inevitably going to be facing disasters, which is like almost everywhere at this point. And COVID is just like, I mean, a universal disaster. I'm trying right now to get the state to allow us to feed not just wildfire evacuees, but also COVID affected communities. And in more places in the state, and anywhere that somebody's suffering from that, people need to be fed. And people are losing their homes. People are not losing their homes, but they're losing their jobs and they can't afford food. And part of the challenge is that if you're looking at a government that denounces homelessness in the way that they do, then they do not rush to help in the way that people need it right now, because homelessness is a stigma, and people don't feel the empathy for what people go through when they end up on the street. And so a lot of that is coming into a winter season that is lethal in many places of the country. So what I want to see are more restaurants binding together in order to create basically a social service network in order to feed these populations of people that are not just what would they call previously homeless, as if that were a bad thing to begin with, but also the like COVID affected are serious and it's disastrous and they need our help, and we need the help of counties and state governments in order to fund that. By keeping us open, we save an immense amount on not having unemployment, on not having defaulted loans, on not having problems that come from landlords not being able to make their rent, downtowns not being vacant, like all the things that you guys know that come from having restaurants stay open. But that needs to be convinced in ways that show that this thing can work. And I can share that data. I can show that what we do works for restaurants that are here. And when you look at other food service places in Oregon, other sort of like distributors and stuff, they've commented that they're like, you guys are the only ones right now that are still like ordering. They're still like, not suffering in the way that the rest of the state is suffering because of the work that we're doing.
Oh my gosh. I would think, I don't know, you've done a bit of writing in your life, and it seems like you've got a story where you dive into the deep end in things that you've said multiple times, I had no background in this, and then you end up accomplishing something pretty incredible. And it's inspiring, frankly, but it's also really fun to watch. I mean, maybe it's like I don't know. I would love to see the model on paper. It's not a Venn diagram, but like step one, and here this leads to this, and I don't know. Maybe we could talk, but if we came up with something like that, we could try to get the word out for other people who want to accomplish, not just who want to accomplish this. I mean, it's a beautiful model that can keep restaurants going right now and can keep people fed, and all the other downstream positive results that you just mentioned. It'd be fun to get the word out, and there's a lot of people right now who, frankly, they have some downtime and they're probably looking for ways to contribute, just didn't think through it the way you did. And having that model might be a launching pad for a lot of people to start something in their communities.
I mean, to be clear, it's not an original idea. This is not like I mean, obviously other people through COVID early on, other people have been feeding people who are affected by disasters, and
Sure.
restaurants have gotten paid for it. But I don't know of another highly localized version of what we're doing that is supported in the way that we're supported around a disaster for the long-term support that we intend to be here. And because hot meals are right now, I mean, people are in hotels, they don't have homes, but eventually they have like more permanent housing, but they still need our help. They still need food support. And so how does that transition? And how do we, and we involve all food businesses. We we just got like, 15,000 pounds of donated apples. And then you're sort of like, who's a local processor who's going to turn that into applesauce, apple chutneys, other things that we can then use, give away, give to restaurants to cook with. 500 pounds of persimmons is going to be turned into like a persimmon vinegar that hopefully in the spring restaurants are going to use. How do we continue to make all these food businesses also communicate with each other better at the same time? I mean, there's a need for resiliency. I think that's one of the biggest things early on in COVID was like suddenly all the distribution networks were gone and people were like scared that they weren't going to have, steaks and toilet paper. And it was like the reality that we need more localized resiliency in our food systems, in our food sheds is part of what, is fostered through these types of connections being made. So, I mean, while we can look to like the government to help us in disasters, what we really need are localized responses and ways that we're going to help our own communities recover, because no one else is going to be as invested into that as we are,
Sure.
Um,
I love it. I love the vision. Okay, we've got time for a quick one. I'm trying to figure out. We probably got through 3 of like the 18 questions that I sent you, which is great, which is fine because I love what we've talked about. Okay, I'm going to end with this one. I've never asked anybody this, and I don't know if you've heard this. It's been said that when you want to get to know someone, don't ask them what they believe, ask them what they love. What do you love? What do you love? What's your passion? What's something that you just want to see that you love?
Yeah, I saw that question in the brief moment that I looked it over, and I was sort of like, I wonder if he's going to really ask me that. What do I love? I guess if we're in the context of what we're talking about, aside from the love of my children and my wife, I mean, in the context of what we're talking about, it's I love uncertainty, and there's a way that feels like it is the antithesis to like complacency in a way, which and so for me, the uncertainty of doing things but still doing them is like unconsciously what I end up in my entire life. I mean, actually, before this fire, I was trying to get my wife to move to Spain, and she was like, "What? Oh, like, where are you going to move in Spain?" And I was like, "Let's move to San Sebastian." She's like, "You've never even been there." And I was like, "Let's just see what happens," like. And she's the complete opposite. She's like, "We got to plan for this thing. We got to like research it." And I'm like, what's the worst? We don't like Spain. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just sort of like that, and I'm attracted to situations that allow me to fall into them authentically and then learn that way. And that's not a model that's taught in our schools. Our schools are, that model of education is cerebral and academic and like memorization and stuff like that. That didn't work for me. Like, I hated school, and I did well on tests, but like it was a terrible way for me to learn. And I had to realize later, after feeling like a failure in certain ways in school, even though I wasn't failing, but it just never worked for me, that I was like, there's such better ways to learn. And ever since then, everything that I've done has been just like, just do it, just like go into it and just like do what you can in order to immerse yourself in it and surround yourself by it, and then just adapt, and so that attraction to uncertainty is the thing that ends up driving my, like my whole life. Like literally last year, at the beginning of the year, I didn't own a single plant. Like there's a couple behind me, but literally there's like 150 in this house right now. And my wife was like, why the fuck do you buy so many plants? And it's just like, I just fall into things where I'm just like, I can't imagine my life without plants, and that's like how, and so this Rogue Food Unites, it was, I didn't ask any questions. You just saw what you should do. Felt like the right thing to do at the time. And then I just did it. And I think that there are those opportunities that people so often have that there is a fear to not pursue those. But I think it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that, one, there are things that I don't have, that there are things that I have that are support systems that enable me to do that. One, white male privilege, which is there. Two, financial privilege, which is there. Like these are things that have allowed me to have a support system where I can take greater risks.
Sure.
And so it's enabled me to do a lot of those things. If this were to fail, I had something else to fall back on. You know what I mean? Like, if I wasn't able to pursue butchery and I had quit the marketing career, like I still had something else to fall back on. I had savings from a marketing career too. Like all those things have been like enabled me to mitigate risk, but they're mitigated also through an aspect of social and racial privilege. So, those play a dramatic role. I mean, I recognize that even like the creation of Rogue Food Unites in the aftermath of a fire, as a white man starting a new organization, having conversations with the state, telling them I have no experience doing disaster relief, and they're still trusting me to take over the county. They're asking me to take over more counties. Like, I don't know if that would happen for somebody who wasn't in my privileged position, who can write well, who speaks the way they want to hear a person speak. Like all those things play a really dramatic role in it too. So, but nonetheless, I have personal characteristics and qualities that benefit some of those as well. So, my future goal really with Rogue Food Unites is not to continue running this. It's to hand it over and not have it be a white-run organization, because we largely serve not white populations. And I feel like we're benefiting from that in this exact moment, but my goal is not to have that continue. I feel like the organization should reflect the communities more that it, in leadership, not just in personnel and other stuff, that are the communities that we serve.
Absolutely. I wonder if there's someone in your town that you're serving right now who is one of the future team members of Rogue Food Unites to help run it, and someone that you got to help feed and be a part of supporting as you continue to show up in your teams and everything, who loves the mission and gets to run it someday for their community.
I mean, that's a beautiful idea. I would love that,
Well, let's hope. Adam, listen, thanks to you. Thanks to your family for giving up dad and husband for an hour tonight.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your story so much. You've done things and accomplished things. Maybe it's that love of uncertainty and the unknown of what's coming, but that blow my mind. And frankly, it's like I keep thinking back to the Cliff Young Shuffle, man. Just by not
I'm going to look him up.
You should. Yeah, look him up. I think I've watched YouTube videos, the Cliff Young Shuffle. And you've accomplished things because you didn't know what it was supposed to look like, partially. And I think you're also a lover of learning. It seems like you are a student at heart. Maybe you didn't like school, but you are a student who loves diving in and learning and figuring it out. And so anyway, thank you for your time. We want to continue to support you. Everyone watching, Adam, it's adamdanforth.com is your website, correct?
Yeah.
Then so you go check out Adam's story and some of his books, etc. And there, go to roguefoodunites.org to see what he's doing up in Ashland, Oregon, and pick some of the things off there to figure out, is there a way I can contribute in my town right now that looks similar to this? Chances are there is. So go do that.
I'm also on the board of 2 other food-based organizations. One that's called the Good Meat Project, which is based in Portland but is nationwide, and another one called Chefs Collaborative, which you guys may have heard of because it's really the only chef-based nonprofit that deals with the people behind the celebrities in the kitchen. We're really sort of like the one who wanted to represent the entire restaurant and the entire staff. So and both of those are other great organizations that deserve our attention, our support, and things like that. Both of them deal with strengthening communities through good education, advancing good food, and educating not only consumers, but also us as food professionals and also people producing our food.
Oh man, I love it. You get to contribute in lots of ways. I think that's actually where we didn't know. I don't know that we didn't met, but I'm sure we saw each other at when you were here in Boulder, in Chautauqua Park, when we set up those big tents and did the cooking, and that was fun years ago.
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah, Kelly and so many cool people.
Kelly Whitaker?
Yeah, Kelly Whitaker. We worked with Kelly at Basta and Wolf's Taylor, et cetera, on some projects. And I think, was it Chef Hosea from Black Belly was there? A few people. That was fun. But yeah, Chefs
Kelly was he was one of our local leaders for the Chefs Collaborative chapter. That's Boulder, Denver.
Yeah, he's been a fun person to work with for sure, and always pushing the envelope, right? Always trying cool new things. I think he's got like a grain
awesome.
house now and all that kind of stuff. So everyone, listen. Thanks for joining Adam and I. Who said that? Chef John, thank you. Awesome and inspiring stuff from you both. John, thanks for joining us, my friend. I hope you are well in the mountains right now. Actually, John's community, where he is a chef in, I think it's Glenwood Springs, had huge fires this summer, and there was a lot of anxiety there too. So, John, thank you for joining us. Everyone, let Adam's story be a lesson. Sometimes what you don't know is the greatest opportunity to dive in and start learning things and figuring things out. And you'll find a love along the way, or a passion along the way. Taz says, thank you, Taz. Thanks for joining us, brother. Everyone, remember, if you're doing it, keep going. You just keep moving. In the words of our buddy Dave Turner, there is a light at the end of this tunnel we're in. We know it's a little bit dark right now, but keep moving, keep growing, keep learning. Find something that you're passionate about that brings you joy, and dive in. Just, go see what happens. Thank you for this community. You continue to support one another. The encouragement, the humor, the education, the uplifting has been overwhelming for so many in our community, and we're going to keep doing it. Remember, if you're in a particularly tough place right now, we get it. We've all been there. Adam talked about 2014, I think he said, a rough year, and certainly in my experience, I shared my story a few months ago, really hard times where I didn't know if I was going to keep going. But you know what? We did, and beautiful things come of it. When you keep moving and you commit to that joy, and you commit to growth, and you commit to yourself and living whatever fulfillment looks like. So you just keep moving. If you've got friends in food service that need a place to feel supported, a place to grow, go ahead and invite them in for conversations like this, for the daily uplifting and fun and education that we offer. We would welcome anyone in. Thank you both. Deborah, thank you. Everyone, Adam, again, thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You got it, my friend. Everyone, we'll see you next Wednesday. Have a great night. Bye-bye.